Hey everyone. So if you follow me on Facebook, you know that I finally reached the part of the publishing process of this book where I need a little bit of money. I need a little bit of crowdfunding to be able to support me the rest of the way. So if you've been blessed by these videos and if you have a desire and a passion to see this book be published so that it can help other people that have experienced trauma or help other people who have loved ones who've experienced trauma, please click on the link in the description below. I'm going to leave it there and donate whatever's on your heart if you want to partner with me in this. I thank you again for all of your love and support. It's meant the world to me. But that being said, let's get into today's video. And in today's video, I'm going to finish up my topic on depression. So throughout this series, I've used a metaphor, and it's a Hebrew metaphor that's found in the Bible for depression called a broken spirit. And the reason why they use that metaphor is because the spirit for the Hebrew meant more than just the immaterial side of you. It also referenced the part of your emotional vitality that was responsible for your emotional well-being, your emotional strength, your emotional vitality, things like that. They saw it almost as being like a muscle. So when they're referencing the spirit, that's what they're talking about sometimes. And to have a broken spirit means that that organ or that muscle is not functioning correctly. So as a result, your emotional vitality will dry up. You will have no passion, you will have no willpower, dynamism, or drive. Also, you become a little bit emotionally unstable. You become overwhelmed very easily by your emotional states. And on top of that, it's very hard for you to rein yourself in. You become a little bit less emotionally self-controlled, and therefore you could become aimless, you could become even mean or destructive to yourself and to others. And in my last couple of videos, I've been talking about how to cope with these symptoms, right? Maybe not necessarily heal from them, but how do you just withstand them? And if you missed those videos, I encourage you to take a listen to them because I do believe they would be very much helpful for you if you're going through depression. But the question could be asked is, okay, if I do have depression though, is there something practical that I can do to mend the spirit once it's become broken? Or is it just going to be broken for the rest of my life? And my answer to that is yes and no. So if you have a broken spirit as a result of some sort of a grief, meaning some sort of a tragedy or traumatic event has just recently happened in your life, like you just lost your job, someone in your life died, or maybe some trauma from the past has just recently surfaced in your life and become much more painful for you. Regardless, if something like that is why you're depressed right now, why you have a broken spirit, then yes, there are a lot of practical things that you can do to help mend the spirit and to get it right back to normal, and you really can do that. However, if you're someone like me, someone who is not depressed because of some sort of a tragedy, but simply because of your nature, meaning that there's something in you biologically, chemically that's imbalanced, or just the way that you mentally process things makes you way more prone to going into fits of depression. For people like you and for people like me, that means that we can't actually mend the spirit to the place where we'll be totally normal. Depression is always going to be a part of our life. However, what we can do is we can strengthen the spirit to be able to withstand any pressure, to be able to go through depression when it comes and cope with it much, much better, and hopefully strengthen our spirit to the state where our spirit won't be broken so easily. So we will go longer periods without having depression as well. And that's kind of what's happening in my life right now. I've shared with you guys that I still struggle with depression. I still go through seasons of depression. Some of them are very much debilitating and harmful, but others are not that bad. And as I've been growing in this, I've noticed that my time of depression has become further and further apart. I've also noticed that when I'm in depression, it lasts less time, and I'm much, much more functional during my times of depression than I've ever been, right? And this is all a result of me strengthening my spirit through these things I'm going to share with you, as well as in my relationship with God. So how does this work? Well, before I get into that, I do want to talk about something that's a little bit controversial, and that would be the topic of medication. Right? So think about your broken spirit as being, as the Hebrews understood it, some sort of like an organ or a muscle or something like that. If you break something in your body, whether it's an arm, a leg, something like that, you go through a recovery process. And while you're going through the recovery process, it is beneficial to be on some sort of a pain medication. But the pain medication is not a cure, right? If I have a broken arm and they give me Vicodin or Percocet or something like that, that medication doesn't heal the arm. All it does is help me deal with the symptoms of pain that my body is experiencing. And therefore, when I take those pills, I'm understanding this isn't what's healing me. It's just helping me go through the healing process. The reason why I mention that is because I think a lot of people, when they think of antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications and things like that, they look at the pill as if it's a cure, and it's not. None of these pills are cures. They help abate the symptoms, but you still have the problem underneath. And therefore, you should never look at the pill as a solution. And if you're going to a psychiatrist or a therapist or a counselor who is looking at medication as some sort of a cure, you should probably find another one. And you can know this very easily. If when you sit down with them and they diagnose you with depression or anxiety or something like that, if their first instinct is, here's a pill, and that's it, that's probably a doctor who sees it more as a cure than as something that helps you cope with the symptoms and helps you through this healing process. If you're instead with someone who's listening to your problems and encouraging you to get counseling and encouraging you with nutritional things and other types of solutions to your problem, and then gives you the pill and says, hey, this helps you a little with the symptoms, let's try you at a low dosage and maybe we could up you up. People like that, they're ones that care about you. They're the kind of counselors who actually do want to help you, and they're not the ones that see the pills as a cure, because they aren't. So if you're going to go on a medication, just understand that. If you're going through a period of grief, the medication really can help you go through the grieving process. So if you find yourself in a debilitating amount of depression, right? And when I mean debilitating, I mean it's debilitating. It's not just a little hard. You find it hard to function because you're so depressed. That medication can really help you get through this time. Take a low dosage, understand the medication that you're getting, because some of these medications have a lot of side effects. You are messing with your brain's chemistry, which is always kind of a dangerous thing to do. So be very, very aware of what these side effects are, how they're going to affect your mood, your personality. Some of these pills can actually make you suicidal, so be aware of that, right? Have a plan of people that can be around you while you're taking this medication, so that if you do become suicidal, they're aware of that. They're there to help you. They're there to make sure that you don't do anything drastic while you're getting used to the pill and things like that. Also, if you go through some sort of a horrible injury or things like that, sometimes the injury could be so bad that you have to be on pain medication for the rest of your life. Right? Now, while that can happen, that's never the ideal. Doctors will never, ever, ever try to prescribe you pain medication for the rest of your life, because they understand something. That means that something is permanently broken. The goal is always to fix what's broken, not to just cope with something that's going to be permanently broken. So some people out there have depression that's chronic, and it's so bad that they will have to be on antidepressants for the rest of their life. They exist, they're out there, and it's really, really sad that those people are out there and that they have to deal with this. However, not many people fall under that category. The vast majority of us are people like me, either like me, who, even though we go through chronic depression, it's not debilitating. We can handle it without medication. Or they're people that are just going through a grieving process, and their spirit will heal eventually if they just give it some time. So be very wary of what kind of medication you're taking, and if at all possible, have a plan to get off of it. That's the ideal, to get off of the medication once your spirit begins to heal and once you start to stabilize. Right? For those people out there that are unfortunate enough, my heart does go out to you if you're in that state. For the people out there that do have to be on medication for the rest of your life, that's okay, right? These things I'm about to say are still going to be applicable for you, because remember, the pill is not a cure, but it helps with the symptoms. So hopefully these things and these tips will help you deal with the symptoms a lot better as well. So let's get into them. The first thing that I would say is, if you have a broken bone, the most immediate thing that you need to do is to take pressure off of it, right? If you have a broken leg, sensible thing to do is to not walk on it all the time, to put it in a cast, to immobilize it so that it has time to do its natural healing process. You have to understand, your mind, God created our minds in an amazing, amazing way. They want to be healed. They want to be in a state where they're not broken. So therefore, your mind is going to naturally have a lot of resources to heal itself, which is really, really amazing and cool. But in order to go through this healing process, you might have to take some time off of things. If you just went through a horrible loss in your life, don't go immediately back to work. Take some time off of work. If you are going through a grieving process and it's taking a long period of time, obviously you can't be off work for the rest of your life. You have to go back eventually, and sometimes as you're going through the grieving process, it does help to take your mind off of things for brief moments of time. So just being home alone all the time and just crying is not going to be good for you long term. So yeah, going back to work is good. Having that in your life is going to be a good thing, but try your best to alleviate any unnecessary stress that you can. Even people like me that have chronic depression, it might be good to just have someone in your life that knows what you're going through, that can help you out if things do become too difficult, right? That you could say like, hey, like I think I'm doing okay now. I'm going into a season of depression, but if things are too tough, could you help me with little things? Can you help get me groceries every now and then? Maybe help me with some chores around the house. Little things that might just take some stuff off your plate and make it a little easier to cope with what you're going through. That could be a huge, huge help. But the main thing that we need to do is we need to learn how to go through what we would call emotional therapy. So if you break a bone, what you do is you immobilize it, but then you go through physical therapy. And the physical therapy is what is designed to strengthen the muscle after it's been broken. If all you do after you break a bone is you just don't use it, then what's going to happen is the muscle will atrophy. And sometimes it's good for a time, right? It's good to put your leg in a cast if it's broken for a time. But once it heals, the first thing you need to start doing is putting yourself through physical therapy, which is difficult, it's hard, it's not fun, and it's really discouraging. The reason why it's discouraging is because if you're someone who's had two functional legs your whole life and all of a sudden you get a cast off, you're going to be very, very disappointed with what you're going to be able to do. You're going to find it to be difficult to walk around your bed once, right? When you may have been able to run marathons a couple months prior. So it can be very, very discouraging. The same thing is going to be true for your spirit. As you begin to heal, it's important to try to utilize your spirit. Use it. Don't let that thing atrophy. So for me, the reason why my depression was so bad and the reason why it was so debilitating when I did get depressed, and I got depressed all the time, is because I refused to use my spirit, right? I would always shove down emotion. I would always disassociate from the things that were happening around me. I would never let myself feel things. But remember, the spirit is responsible for regulating your emotional vitality and strength. So if you're not using your emotions and you're not trying to regulate your emotions, the spirit is going to atrophy, just like a muscle. It's not going to be used, and therefore it's going to be very, very weak, and it's going to be susceptible to being broken very quickly. And when it is broken, you're going to be debilitated by it. You're not going to be able to function. So learn how to use your spirit in emotional therapy. So how does emotional therapy look? Well, when you start getting emotions, whether it's anxiety, whether it's sadness and grief, whether it's anger, whatever the emotion is, don't shut it out. Don't disassociate from it. Try to feel it for a little bit of time, right? Just start in small steps. Just try to feel that emotion a little bit. Maybe journal about it, right? What are you feeling? Why are you feeling that way? What are the thoughts going through your head, right? Which one of those thoughts are true and which one of those thoughts are false? Right? Really think through what you're going through emotionally. This is all training up your spirit. You're learning how to regulate your emotional stability and your emotional self-control by doing these things. Right? Remember what I talked about in my last video as well, that when you're going through strong emotions, you're always bound to have some thoughts that are false and damaging. So it's important to understand, why is that thought false? What's wrong with it? Even though I'm feeling it and I can't stop feeling it, doesn't mean I have to listen to it. Doesn't mean I have to obey it, right? I can exercise self-control, right? When my anxiety is telling me I can't do something, maybe I need to tell myself that I can do something and push myself, really push myself to try, even though I feel so anxious and stressed out, right? Things like that, little things like that can really, really help your emotional strength. It could really help your vitality. Also, as I said, don't isolate. Try to be around people as much as you can, because when you're around people, it actually forces you to utilize your spirit. It's important for interaction. It's important for the way that you relate to people, your empathy, your compassion, the way that you see other people's emotions, right? All these things are vital. One of the most famous psychiatrists who dealt with depressed people was once asked what he would do if he was ever found himself in a state of depression. He said, I would find somebody out there that was more depressed than me, and I would try to help them. Now, his whole point is that, like, when you're depressed and you're in yourself and you're stuck in your own head, man, it's just like a nonstop feedback loop. You're going to be stuck there. But if you learn how to get outside of yourself, how to help other people with their emotions, all of that is accessing your spirit. It's strengthening it, and it's getting you out of your negative emotions. These are very, very important principles. Also, do not be discouraged by setbacks. Anyone who goes through any type of physical therapy will tell you, you're going to have setbacks. You're going to have moments where you're doing great, and then you're going to push yourself a little too hard, and you're going to be broken again, right? Don't be discouraged by that. Keep getting back up. Keep trying, right? Learn how to pray through your emotions. And we'll talk more about this in the coming weeks as I go through the specific emotions. But read through the Psalms. The psalmists do this all the time. They take their raw, unfiltered emotions to God, and they learn how to talk to God about these things. It's almost like a journaling exercise if you read through some of these Psalms. It's really, really amazing and inspiring if you go through these things correctly. But all that being said, there's no substitute for having someone else help you with your emotions as well. Try to find either a friend, a family member, or a counselor to try to talk about your emotions with as well. This also helps stimulate the growth in your spirit. But all that being said, going through this emotional therapy, taking time to rest, things like that, know that this is a process. Right? It's a process. If you're like me, it's a process you're going to be going through for the rest of your life. If you're someone going through grief, don't be discouraged. It's going to take a long time to go through that grieving process. Don't give up. Right? One of my favorite passages is Galatians 6, verse 9. It says, "Don't be discouraged while doing good. For in due season you're going to reap a harvest if you don't give up." Right? So that's so important and valid for me as well as for so many people out there who are going through depression or any of these other negative emotions. So in my next videos, I'm going to go through some other emotions and teach a little bit more about how to deal with specific emotions in your prayer life with God, as well as in your own personal mental exercises and journaling and things like that. But anyway, if you guys have any questions about depression, please leave them in the comments below. Please like this video if it's blessed you in any way, and subscribe to my channel. But at any rate, I look forward to talking to you guys again. Thanks.